Today on the Beginner Photography Podcast.
Especially if you're a new photographer who's really into trying creative things like those, it's really easy to look back on that stuff. But I also think that I think that's so helpful. But like when I look back on that, I don't feel the need to criticize it as much because I'm so critical of my current work. And what I
Mm.
like to do is look back at those photographs and kind of see how they evolved and like see elements that photographs I took in 2010, 2011 that were very amateurish, but looking at them now as somebody who has done this for a long time, I can be like, I was trying to do the same colors that I'm doing now. I was trying to get the same emotion that I'm getting now. That focus is weird, but I was trying to do this that I can do now.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, where each week we interview the world's most interesting photographers to learn what it really takes to capture beautiful images and compelling stories so that you can start to do the same. Welcome back, photo friends. Today we are chatting with Lissa Chandler, who is an Arkansas-based wedding, family, and senior photographer who chooses not to niche down on a genre, but instead niche down on a feeling. It may seem like a small difference, but as you'll hear, it is exactly what she needed to blossom as a photographer. So Lissa also just published a brand new book called Photo Shoot Checklist, which I have a copy of right here. And as you can imagine, having to shoot multiple different types of shoots, staying organized is very important. So I bought this copy of her book, and I'm going to be giving it away to one of you. So be sure to stick around until after the interview to learn how you can win yourself a copy. But first, one thing that I struggle with when interviewing guests is kind of that balance between asking questions specifically for beginners, like brand new to photography, and then asking questions that photographers who may be just a bit further in their journey would benefit from. Well, this week, Jessica82 let me know that I'm on the right path in her 5-star iTunes review. Jessica says, great for all levels of photographers. Really informative, entertaining, and enjoyable to listen to. I've already gotten plenty of good tips and will definitely listen to more. Jessica, wow, thank you so much for that. Your feedback really does let me know that I am on the right track and to keep it up. So again, thank you. Leaving the show a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or even in Spotify now is one of the best ways to help the podcast stand out in this sea of podcast information overload. So if you haven't already, please consider leaving the podcast a rating or review yourself. So with that, let's go ahead and get on into today's interview. So my first question for you, Lissa, is it's a simple one. When did you know that photography was going to play an important role in your life?
Honestly, always. Like I grew up just taking pictures. It was always my thing. And then I'm older, I'm 35 in the photography world. So like when I was kind of doing photography, like it wasn't a thing. Like people didn't go and become photographers when I was in high school. I had never met a photographer. You know what I mean? Like just wasn't a thing. And I kept wanting to do it and kept wanting to do it, but didn't really know what that was. And then when I was in college, I just kind of started taking portraits for people and then fell into weddings.
What did you go to college for?
I have a degree in history.
History. So I'm always interested in the people. So I come from, I'm similar. I was class of '06. And growing up, it was always like, for some reason, I always knew that I wanted to be in some sort of visual field. So I went
Mm-hmm.
to school for actually cinematography, not
Good.
photography. But for those who go to college like yourselves for history, what is that decision like? I want to know how important was photography in your life at this point to be like, you know what, all of this money and time that I'm dedicating to history, I'm actually going to go this other route. What was that like for you?
When it like came time for graduation, I just couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Aside from photography?
Yeah, I just couldn't decide. But I mean, I know I talk about like kind of joke about being old, but like there wasn't people doing that. Like it was
Hmm.
just very, I can remember when I was like, I'm going to take photographs, like I'm going to be a photographer, and the looks you would get from people. I don't know if you experienced them, but they just like, it was very different, at least in the community I was in. And so I just couldn't think of anything else I wanted to do besides that. That was it.
So how did you think to yourself, like, what was the plan for making it work? Was it, if I just take pretty enough pictures, people will come to me? Or did you know that there had to be some business sense behind it?
Oh, I knew there had to be some business sense, but I was definitely a like learn as you go kind of person. So I started taking portraits. I think my first, like high, like where I got paid was probably like 5 years before I actually opened a business.
Was that in college at that point?
Yeah, I was right after I graduated that I graduated like 2 weeks later, filed a business license.
Oh, wow. Like real quick,
Yeah.
you're like, we're making this happen. I'm going to figure it out
Yeah.
and we're going to do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what were you shooting at that point? It was just friends and whatnot from college?
That is what I had done. We had actually moved from where we went to college. We were already married and had a kid and came down to Arkansas. And so I didn't know anyone.
So you had to start fresh.
I had to start totally fresh.
What was that like?
It was intimidating, but I think it was one of those situations where I really didn't have anything to lose. Like I knew that it might not work out. I didn't expect to I never expected to go as far as I ended up going, if that makes sense. I
Hmm.
really just thought it was going to be kind of not like part-time, but not like what it became. I thought it was going to be something that like I did and I made money from, but I also already was a mom, and because I had my first kid when I was still in school, and just very like wasn't sure. I didn't really have a huge goal like I feel like a lot of people can now, because I didn't even know how to envision it. I don't know if that answered the question.
Wow, I didn't even know how to envision it. How interesting. That's almost like freeing because at that point it can almost be whatever
Yes.
you want, right?
Yes. I wasn't like, I'm going to be a wedding photographer. I actually wanted to be a posed baby photographer. And then I did that a couple of times and I hated it. I was like, this is not for me.
I,
Posing them on bean bags. Like I couldn't do it. And yeah, so I already had that experience where it wasn't like what I thought it was going to be. So then I was just very open to finding like what fit me and my personality and like what I wanted to do.
and that was weddings.
It was, yeah.
How did that come about? Like you obviously did the posed newborns, right? You're
Yeah.
like, nope, don't like this. You're shooting friends from college. I'm sure that's going okay. And then you
Yeah.
think, nope, weddings.
Yeah. I mean, basically, but not really. So, like, I had shot couples like from the very beginning of like when I had like taken photos for my friends. Like, it wasn't like a new genre, couples wasn't, but I was like, there's no way I'll ever do weddings. I hadn't really been around a lot of weddings, really, period. So, I didn't really know a lot about them. And then I had like a Craigslist ad, because again, this was like, 2010, something like that,
Right.
2011. And I had a Craigslist ad, and someone found me and they like convinced me to shoot their wedding. And I had shot a wedding before and it was just a horrible experience and I didn't want to do it. But this couple like convinced me and I really liked them. And it was a Laotian wedding. It was not a traditional wedding like usual we shoot. And it was like a 2-day celebration where the first part was in their house and it was this huge party and like very different. And then the second day was more like traditional, like a wedding that I would shoot most weekends now. And it was so different. And there was just so much to photograph. And I was like, you know what? Like, this is it. Like, this is really fun. And that was, I don't know if I had done another like normal, if I had done another like mason jar wedding, because that was what was going on at the time. You know,
Yes.
if I had done another mason jar wedding, if that had been my experience, I don't know if I would have gotten pulled into weddings, but doing a wedding that was really unique based on what I had seen in the past at weddings, that really like triggered something in me. And I was like, I want to do this. This is really fun and colorful and bright and just different.
I would imagine as somebody who didn't really have like a direction, like or I guess like that end goal, like you were saying, not knowing where you wanted to take photography, to be able to see something so unique and interesting, how that would definitely open up your eyes. But I want to take a step back because I feel like I jumped around with some of the questions and now like we're already in the business phase. I want to know more about you and learning photography though, because you're there in college, you have yourself a camera. Did you have, I guess that what I want to know is like where did the education for photography come? Were you all self-taught? Was
It was
it
all
was it books?
self-taught.
Was it the library? All self-taught.
It
Okay.
was all self-taught. It was a lot of trial and error. And I did get some books, but those didn't really come into play until later, where I like could pinpoint what I wanted to learn, because I just didn't even know. Like I had no idea. I can remember someone coming up to me and being like, oh, I heard you like photography. Like, what do you think of this aperture? And I was like, what are they talking about? like
Yes.
I can remember being like, well, I don't really do like the technical stuff. I'm just like interested in the art.
So
I didn't know. I had no idea, you know?
so it was that the world was just slowly expanding around you.
Yes.
Okay, and then you just had to go out and just figure it out on your own. So what wow. So what was like what was the most challenging part? Like what was the hardest thing for you to wrap your head around?
Honestly, the hardest thing for me to do, like just like was understanding how everything worked together because it's becomes so overwhelming. Like when you put your camera to manual and you're like, wait a second, like if I do this, does that mean this changes? But does this change too? And then do I have to go back and change that first thing because the way I changed the other things didn't line up quite right? You know, it was very confusing. And I actually thought I broke my camera at one point because the images were black.
So oh, I see. So like your settings were all off, so all of your photos just came out extremely
Yes.
underexposed, which you thought
Yeah.
was
I was
black
like,
and
I
broken.
broke it. Yeah.
So then how do you get around that? Like you think you're standing there, broken camera, right in your head. You're like, oh no. Did you just put it back in the box? I mean, clearly not. Like you figured out how to get out of it. What happened?
Well, that time I think I just put it back into the bag and was like, okay, I'll try again later. But you know, I actually just have a really supportive husband, and he was the one who really was like, you can do this. Like, if this is something you want to do, like, let's do it. And I don't know if I would have ever done it if I wasn't married to him because he was so supportive, because I can talk myself out of a lot of things. Um, you know? And he was like, no, let's try it, let's do it. And kept kind of encouraging me. So when I'd be like, you know what, like, I don't really want to do this anymore. This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. He'd be like, well, let's do this. You know, like he'd come up with a plan for me and with me, not like he told me what to do, because that would
Right.
never happen. We talk about it and kind of work through it together. And that really helped me both as I was learning and as I started my business. And I don't think that person for everyone has to be a spouse. It just has to be somebody who like supports them and like wants, you know, someone they can go to and like talk to about it, because it's really overwhelming. And at the time, you know, graduating 2006, you get it, I was 2005, like very different, like on how you would learn. There wasn't the education there is now, there wasn't the resources. You kind of just like sunk or swam.
Yeah, and you obviously swam because here you are today. So getting into weddings. Well, wait, I guess before we get into there, I want you to think back to some of those earliest photos, right?
Mhm.
Which we all love to do, right? We all love
Oh
thinking
yeah.
about our earliest photos. Um, Thinking about those photos, what do you think are some of the elements that, if you looked at it today, you would say definitely an amateur photograph?
What do you mean? Like just like
Obviously,
artistic
you're
wise or like composition wise? Like what are we talking?
so your skill as a photographer has progressed to the point to where today you can go out with certainty and confidence that you're going to be able to take a photo that you like. If you
Yeah.
look back at some of those earliest photos, is there anything from a technical standpoint, from an artistic standpoint, that makes you think this is not a professional's work?
I mean, yes, but also like I think that something that we do when we are new photographers is just look at everything that's wrong. But I actually love to look back on my old photographs because I can look at them and see what they turned into later. So
Ah,
like I can see things instead of like looking back at them and being like, okay, this focus is off, this composition sucks, like these, you know, like what even like was I trying to do? That's so easy to do, especially if you're a new photographer who's really into trying creative things like those. It's really easy to look back on that stuff. But I also think that like I think that's so helpful, but like when I look back on that, I don't feel the need to criticize it as much because I'm so critical of my current work. And what I
mm,
like to do is look back at those photographs and kind of see how they evolved and like see elements that photographs I took in 2010, 2011 that were very amateurish, but looking at them now as somebody who has done this for a long time, I can be like, I was trying to do the same colors that I'm doing now. I was trying to get the same emotion that I'm getting now. That focus is weird, but I was trying to do this that I can do now.
Hey, Raymond here, and we will get back to today's show in just a moment. If you want to photograph people, families, portraits, weddings, engagements, you know that the elephant in the room is posing. You have a pretty good understanding of how to use your camera, you know how to make a pretty picture, but when somebody steps in front of your lens, well, imagine if you knew how to make them look their best and feel confident. That is what you can do when you understand basic posing techniques. So I want to give you access to my free posing guide over at photoposingguide.com. There are 9 different categories and more than 80 real example photos of poses that you can use for inspiration to rock your next session. Once again, you can download your free photo posing guide over at photoposingguide.com. Now, let's go ahead and get back into today's interview. I absolutely love that, and I have a similar feeling about looking at some of my earliest work, where it's like, wait, I can see what I was trying to do, trying to get to, and I still do these things today. So clearly, I've grown as a photographer, and so have you. So where does it get? Now I want to know. Now we've moved into those weddings, right? Now you're shooting weddings. And taking a look at your website, you're also today doing seniors and families as well. Now, I know that there's a lot of pressure out there in the education space for new photographers that you should be niching down, but that wasn't your jam. So where did this come from?
I don't believe in everyone having to niche down, because I don't think that is helpful for every photographer everywhere. I can't shoot the same thing every single day and be happy. I will feel like I am in a box, and I will not produce my best work. I will not be my best self. I will not any of those things. So for me, I thought very early on about what I wanted to do, because weddings were so unexpected, and I love weddings. And one reason that weddings are a good fit for me is because they have so many elements to them. You get the candids, you get the portraits. There's lots of pretty stuff to photograph. There's downtime, like all of it. I mean, downtime, not really, but
right.
It's not all,
I know
it's
what
not
you mean.
all chaos the whole time, every time. But, just lots of different things about weddings that were attractive to me. But when I asked myself, like, do I want to only shoot weddings? I could never make that jump, because I like shooting other things in between. And I feel like the more I shoot other things, the better my work in other genres of photography becomes. I'm not saying that like everyone needs to do that. And I think that it's very wise to niche down. It's just like, for me, when I sat down and looked at it, over time, I decided that I wanted to niche down on a feeling rather than a genre. And so that has always been my goal, is to niche down on that really colorful, bright, like happy, somewhat whimsical feeling that I have in my photographs, whether it's of a baby or like a flower or a wedding.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe that, niching down on a feeling instead of a genre. And I was actually going to bring that up, because it's like, if I go to your website, while you are doing several different genres of photography, they all have a very cohesive look. And sometimes I wonder, it's like, is that intentional? Because it's like, if you look at, one way that a lot of people try to stand out is that maybe they'll take it from one extreme or another. But for you, I love that you're just like, no, this is who I am as a person. This is the style that I'm going to put into my photos. And then we can still swap out the people and the locations, but it's still one of my photos. I had a question there, and I guess I'm trying to figure out what it is. But I guess essentially, I really love that approach to it, and not niching down. So for you, why then? Now this is more of a business question here.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because another thing that people are told, that if you choose not to niche down, have separate brands or separate, Instagram accounts, separate websites and whatnot. Again, you decided not to do this. Was this for ease of your business, or was there another reason behind this?
No, I literally just could not picture myself shooting the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
That was the only real reason behind it. And then, the more I progressed, the more everything, the more I really was like, you know what, like, I know how I want my photographs to feel, and I know how I want them to make people feel. So that is what important. I realized, as everyone around me was talking about niching down and really focusing on just one or two things, I just, it never felt right to me. And I think that there are a lot of photographers out there that feel that way, but they have been told that they need to just niche down on, photographing high school seniors in a studio, and they shoot that, and that is all they shoot.
Right.
When and so when you put yourself in that box, it's so hard to even take that high school senior and put them in a field, because you're like, no, I shoot studio, I do this. um but when you open yourself up to being able to create different kind of work, I think that it is very, I'm trying to find the right words. I think that it's very creatively freeing to be able to open that door and be able to be like, no, I photograph all of these things because I know how I want my photographs to feel at the end of the day. And when you're trying to create that cohesive feeling, it's going to come out in your work. And especially if you um, really focus on like what you want to create and not what you think the industry wants you to create, it's going to come out and come through. And then I think people will be much more creatively fulfilled and are able to have longer careers and pivot over those careers.
So today, or I guess now that you're, transitioning out of weddings, say last year, or maybe not last year, because I guess last year would be a bad example. At your height, how many shoots would you say that you're doing, in a year?
On average, I would shoot about 25 weddings and 100 portrait sessions.
100 between seniors and families.
Mm.
Okay, so that's quite a bit, and that obviously leads me into my next question here, which is, you have now come out with a book all about photo shoot checklists, right? And I was
Yes.
going to ask, where did this idea come from? But obviously, it came out of necessity for your sanity, because
Mhm.
otherwise, that is a lot of shoots to keep track of. Can you tell me more about the book and I guess how it came together?
Really, it came together in about 3 hours before, besides
I
the
love it.
formatting. But from the idea to being like, oh, I can do this, was really fast, because I am always just like making checklists. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I saw a TikTok where someone was talking about publishing on Amazon. And I was like, that's interesting. And I looked at it, and then I was like, oh my gosh, what if I could just like write my checklist in a book instead of constantly writing them down by hand. And like I'm like, I keep track of them on my computer. I know that a lot of softwares will help, like Honeybook and things like that. But I don't like pushing the button. I like doing the like crossing it off with my hand. And so literally just took that idea, and like I had a proof in my hand a week later after having the idea. So
No way. That is so
yeah.
cool. So just to clarify, these checklists are not like, or are they like things that you should do to prepare for a session, like what to bring on the way to the session, or is this more of on the business side?
It's just planning the shoot out. It's literally just like, I have one. It's just like everything from like the contract to the retainer. Then you have planning, everything. And then at the end, it has like just, all the way from like your signed contracts to what props you want to bring to delivering sneak peeks in the final gallery. Like that's what it is.
Yeah. So the whole point of this is to keep you organized and obviously keep your brain free so that you can probably come up with
Yes.
more creative ideas during a shoot.
Yes. And I also have at the end of each checklist, there's a section, and they're just like one page back and forth. I wanted to make it really simple. And there's a section about like the best part of your shoot and the hardest part of your shoot. And at
Hmm.
first I was like, do I want to put that in there? But I've been using mine since it came in, and it is very helpful. Like it's super, because you don't think about like, because I mean, most shoots are great. Not every shoot is hard, but there is always something like, okay, like I did great, but like I'm really bugged about this series of photographs where like the model's chin wasn't in the right spot. I need to pay attention to chins. And like writing it out and having it be like on that same shoot where you noticed it is just super helpful. And I've only had mine for a few weeks, and it's just been super great.
I agree. I've had a very similar experience. I like to tell listeners of the podcast also to do that audit on yourself. Like
Yes.
after every shoot, I ask myself, like when I get into a car after a wedding, like what went well today? What didn't go well today? Like what could be
Yeah.
changed? And I find that even though like that sounds like a good idea, a lot of people don't actually do it. So
Yes.
if you had a place where you're like writing everything down, that is fantastic because I'll be honest, even though I do this mental exercise after every wedding. Like I don't write these things down. And
Yeah.
I can imagine that at the end of the year, if I was able to look at everything that could be improved and everything that went really well during a wedding, it would be really impactful for sure. Well, I love this. Okay. So then tell me, like, when it comes to a shoot for you, what do you think is the most important aspect that you need to get right? Like, what elements of a photo shoot do you need for you to consider it like job well done, you knocked it out of the park?
You need to connect with the people you're photographing. Like,
How do
I'm
you do
not
that?
saying that you need to like be best friends with everybody, because there was a big movement for a couple of years where like, all your clients are your best friends. And like I get that, but also like that's not true. Um
Yes.
because it's just not like, you're not best friends with every single person you shoot. And if you're shooting professionally, there's just no way for that to be the case. And I totally lost my train of thought. I had a mom brain moment.
For
Um
connecting with clients and making sure that the shoot goes well.
connecting. I feel like if you don't connect with your clients, if you don't just like find a way to like interact with them, then you can have the most amazing photographs, and they will probably love and cherish those, but they will also remember the photographer that was really rude.
Hmm. So we don't want to be rude to our clients, right? So
Yeah.
have you ever had a client where you just like really did not jive with them at all? And how did you handle
Oh
that
yeah.
situation?
Yeah, I mean, you just like put your best foot forward. It's like working with someone on a group project. You might not get along with every single person that you photograph, or like not like not get along, but it's not like you're going to be, it's the best friend thing I'm talking about. Like you're not going to like be best friends with everyone, but you can have a great time with someone for a couple of hours just by like, even if they're kind of resistant to being photographed, like if it's someone in a family who doesn't want to really want to be there, or someone who's just really shy, which I totally understand. I think just as long as you think about the person you're photographing and try to make them comfortable while doing your job, then you're going to do okay. Like you're
Hmm.
going to do great. A lot of things that I hear after I photograph people is like, even like, because I own a style shoot rental company, so I work with models as well. And one thing I hear a lot from models is that photographers just don't tell them what to do, which is just bananas to me. um, and I think just so people crave that connection. It's very vulnerable to be photographed, even if you have been photographed a lot. And I think that just kind of paying attention to the people you're shooting and just making sure they have a good experience will help, even if you don't jive with someone.
Hmm. So making sure that people have a good experience and building a connection with them are not there's a separation there, right? So how do you like what are the things that you do to ensure that you have some sort of rapport or connection with your clients? Is it just through the words on your website, or are you sending out a questionnaire? You what sorts of things are you doing?
So I do all of that. I do a questionnaire before all the shoots. I don't do them before family shoots because as a mom, that would just stress me out to get that from a photographer. Just another thing to do. But I do questionnaires for all of my couples and all of my seniors. I let my clients be as involved in the planning process as they want to be. So for some people, that means that they're just like, I love this X, Y, and Z that you have on your website. Can we do something similar? And we'll create something similar. And some people make Pinterest boards and send me 50 ideas within the first week of booking their contract. And that's great because it means I can pull what they want together. But I would never require someone to send me something they didn't want to send me, because
Mhm.
not everyone plans things the same way. And some people just want to walk up and have it ready for them. And so I need to be prepared to do that. But other people want to control more. And when that's the case, then I take any idea they have for me and construct a shoot for them.
So for your questionnaire, are the questions that you're asking specifically designed around what images they want and how they want it to look? Or are they more personal things like what they do on the weekend, or how they interact as a
It's
family,
both.
things like that? Both. What do
Both.
you think is the most helpful question for you, say non-shoot related? Does that make sense?
Is to ask them like what they are interested in, like what they like to do in their spare time. Because if you have anything in common, and even if you don't, you can pull questions from that if the shoot's not going well. So if
Right.
someone's like, I like Star Wars, and you don't care about Star Wars, but the shoot's not going well, and you're like, so what's your favorite Star Wars movie? And such a simple question can really just like make someone so comfortable because they're talking about
Right.
something they love.
That is a great tip. That is a great tip right there. I can tell that you are very driven to be able to deliver obviously what it is that they want, and that you have some sort of organized process to be able to deliver all this as well, keeping your life organized, where, as a parent, as a business owner, these are all very important things, but I'm also interested in more of the creative side, right? And as a professional, there is this balance of delivering exactly what the client wants, but also creating kind of what fulfills you. So how do you deal with that balance?
Well, that question's really funny because most of my friends, if you ask if I was organized, like they would all laugh because I am like driven by chaos. But I have my lists.
It's organized chaos, right? It's organized chaos.
Organized chaos. For me, the creativity is way more important, and it's way more of like where I love to be. Like that's my jam. I love it. Like that kind of stuff is what I like. And so that's why I have to be more goal oriented with organization and things like that, because otherwise I will just ignore them.
I totally get that. So, because I'm the same way, and in fact, like if one thing that I like to do is before every shoot is I will look at some. I have like a folder on my phone of past inspiration, right? And like just some crazy ideas that like I would never capture at a
Mhm.
session, but it gives me the idea of like this has happened at other sessions before, so why can't I kind of break out of my comfort zone to try something new? But I too am very much like I also need concrete answers. Like I
Mhm.
need to know that I'm going to get, the wide shot of them just holding hands. I need to know that I'm going to get, the medium shot of them, getting close and snuggly and all these things. So for you, when it comes to the shoot itself, is it more structured, or is it more organic in what it is that you capture?
So I will plan and organize things as much as I can. And then as soon as I get to a shoot, it's like I love the idea of like looking at images, like inspiration images or past images. But as soon as I get to a shoot, it all goes out the window. Like everything is gone. And I'm just like going to create like what I can create in that time frame with what I have and push out my best work. But I can plan things like to an inch of their lives. And then as soon as I get the camera in my hand and I'm on location, it's gone.
Yes, yes, I know. Myself and a lot of other photographers will, empathize with that, as that is that's a difficult thing to deal with as well. Especially like right as you show up, you feel prepared, you get out of the car, and you're like, "What was I about to do?" Like this is the worst feeling ever. So when something like that happens, when you do go out, I want to know then, what are you trying to capture, like from a creative standpoint, from the photos that you're capturing, what makes a photo feel creative to you? How do you push those boundaries? How do you make sure that, wow, this is a really big question, I apologize, how do you make
Oh no, I
sure
love it.
that the photos are going to turn out the way that you want?
So I am extremely driven by color and light and texture in all of my photographs. I don't want it to be boring, and it has to have elements of all three of those things to really pull me in as a viewer and as a photographer. So I just am so like passionate about always having those elements in my work so that I'm always pushing on those things and trying to create something that is interesting, but also makes me feel something. I
Hmm.
don't want to like create something that's interesting for the sake of being interesting because then it loses the heart of it. And I don't want to just like create images that are overly like, I don't like photographs that are created to like trick you into an emotion.
Can you give me an example?
Like just it's not even like a specific kind of photograph, but sometimes I'll see, it's kind of like, oh gosh, how am I even gonna put it? I don't, and I'm talking about in my own work, but like I don't like um for me specifically, I don't like making people cry through prompts because I know there's people that makes it feel like it's very authentic and beautiful, and for their work and their work system it is, but for me as a person it makes me feel manipulative.
Okay, I like that.
And and that's something that like when I teach I always am so like very passionate about with my students is like what works for one person, because for one person they're creating this beautiful experience and it's great because they've asked them these questions and they're crying and they have these beautiful photographs, and for me I can't do that because that's just something that feels manipulative to me and my personality. It doesn't mean it's manipulative for the other photographer. It means that it is for me. And I think that the more we shoot and the more we create and the more we just make stuff, the more we are able to pinpoint what works for us and what doesn't. Because I wouldn't know that about myself if I hadn't done it in the past. Does that make sense? But now
Absolutely.
that I've done it and I've done that kind of stuff, I don't like what I created because of how I felt and how the photographs then felt to me afterwards. And so I need that creative energy to flow through all of my work so that it can feel connected and it can feel um tied together, and so that I can shoot whatever I want to shoot and not just one thing.
That is so open. So then how do you get the photos that you want? I know that that seems like a really simple question, but like I know that we prompts are like a big thing, right? Prompts are a big thing because people they want that emotion, and I think that they're probably part of it is scared to pose. But let's say that a couple is in front of you right now, and you want to take their photo. Is it you just set them up in their bodies? Like walk me through how you get to the point to where they're just standing side by side to get to a place where you like how they look, and then you take the photo.
Well, I start talking as soon as I get out of the car and I don't stop until I get it back in the car. So that's the first thing that I do. And I'm actually really shy by nature. I'm not somebody who just like wants to like I like if you see me at the grocery store, like I'm someone who would much more like be like going into the things if I saw someone than like running after them to say hi. Um but I talk to them, I ask them questions nonstop, and talk to them, listen to what they're saying, talk back to them, have like an actual conversation. And as I do that, I give them, I don't really do like a lot of question type prompts. I will every once in a while if it's like hit a slow point or if my brain has just kind of like petered out for a second. But lots of like snuggling, lots of just like holding hands and getting close. I like to say things like, put your arms around her, because not every couple is going to put their arms around each other in the same way. Different couples have different personalities, just like people. When you tell one couple to snuggle, they'll do it very differently than somebody else. And so you're going to get the images you want by just connecting with them and talking and having conversations, while also, just kind of, it's almost like the posing is part of the conversation.
The posing is part
I
of the
don't know if that
conversation.
helps. Like, I don't
No,
know if I'm
100%.
answering that question.
100%. You know what it is? I think that question is really for one thing that I think holds a lot of people back from actually getting out there and shooting is if I'm not good at posing, like how is the shoot going to go, you know? And I love hearing that exactly because what you're saying is that obviously there's things like you're giving them prompts, or I guess you're encouraging them to be who they are by saying things like put your arm around her because they're going to do it in their own way.
Yes.
But the other thing is that you're just having a conversation with these people, and however they react to your conversation with them is who they are as a person, and that's what you're going to capture. And I think that that takes a lot of pressure off.
Mm-hmm.
I think at least I hope that it takes a lot of pressure off those new to photography who are thinking about doing their first shoot, who are worried about, oh, I have to pose everything. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know how to say these things. And if you're just who you are and you just get out of the car and you just start talking until you get back in the car, it should turn out all right, right?
Yes, I mean, it's like, yes, 100%. That is the way that I have been able to do all the different kinds of shoots and all the different kinds of situations, because some situations are very stressful. Like you go somewhere like Especially like if you get into traveling at all. Sometimes you're in a city where you have never been with a couple that you've never met, and it's their wedding day, or maybe you're there for their engagements, but you've never been to any of the places because your flight got in late and you weren't able to go scout anything out. And so you're in a new state you've never been in a new environment with new people. Everything is new, but you're still yourself. And so you can still just be yourself in that situation, and you're still going to be able to create the same kind of images when you're completely out of your own environment.
My next question for you was, if one of your kids came to you and said, "Hey, I want to be a photographer," what advice would you give them? But I think that was it. Am I right? Or is there other advice that you would give?
There would be other advice, but yeah, that'd be the main gist.
Okay, okay. Last question. What else? What else would you tell them? Like, okay, so that they get that, just be yourself. All right. What's next?
That it's going to be really freaking hard. And they gotta prepare for one thing that we don't talk about a ton, I feel like, is that being a photographer or any kind of creative business owner means that you can literally face rejection daily. Like, it's not something that like you just it's not like when you're applying for normal jobs you get a lot of no's. When you're writing a book you get a lot of no's, but then you either publish a different book or you get a different job and then you move on and you're working on your next project. But with photography, the projects are shorter. You're not spending 2 years writing a book. You're not looking for a long-term 9 to 5. You're looking for much shorter kind of work, looking for people you connect with. And sometimes you'll think you found that and the answer is still no. Or you'll apply to teach for something, or your goal will be to get in a certain magazine and the answer is no, and it keeps being no. And then maybe you'll get that one thing up, maybe you will get that dream client, but that client is only one client of all of your other clients. Does that make sense? Like, it's not, there's a lot of rejection, and sometimes you will be like, dang, I've got this, it's great. And sometimes you'll book something that seems like an incredible experience, or you'll be like, I have reached the top, like I have done the things I need to do, and then it's horrible.
Wow.
And you're like, this is hard. Like, this is hard. Sometimes I think that is something that photographers are not prepped to deal with, because it can be very difficult to have that kind of rejection on something that you love. And so even when you have a fantastic career and you're shooting the things you want to shoot and you're doing the things that you want to do, you can still be being told no very often for things that you wouldn't even think about being told no about before you were told no.
Thank you for being so open and honest about that. I love that, because you're absolutely right, but I want to know, as somebody else, I would consider myself in a very same. Also, I feel like very shy, when it comes to, seeing somebody at the grocery store. I'd rather just like, oh, look, I'm going to go over to the frozen section over here.
Oh, that looks good over there.
Yeah, I'm going to walk over there. So as somebody who is self-proclaimed shy and dealing in an industry where you have to be very vulnerable because you are creating something and this is your art, how do you deal with that rejection?
There's a lot of ways, but I think that the thing that has helped me the most is to create the work that I want to create. So when I'm making the stuff that I want to make, I am still, even if nobody else likes it, if I create something and nobody else likes it, but I love it, that is what matters. And I am not telling myself no, and that I'm telling myself yes. And I am building the portfolio that I want to build. And sometimes that portfolio is going to be more trendy than other times. Sometimes it's going to be more liked at other times than it is. But what matters is that I like it and that I'm proud of it, and that I can control the work that I want to create. And I don't mean that in like a even though I said control, like a controlling fashion, but like I give myself permission to create the photographs I want to create and not the photographs that somebody tells me I have to make. And yes, when I'm shooting client work and they're like, you know what, like we don't like the weird light. And I'm like, okay, we won't do the weird light. And that's fine. And I'm happy to do that for them. And they can be fantastic and someone I would actually want to be best friends with, but they might not like the weird light. And so I won't do the weird light. But when I shoot for myself, I sure as hell am going to do the weird light because it's mine.
Yes.
Mine.
Yes. So I know I said last question like 10 minutes ago, but last question here. Have you always felt this way, or was this something that you had to learn through years of rejection?
It was definitely something I had to learn because I realized I worked really hard and I've had a really, really good career. It's been really great. And I've had a lot of things happen that I never thought could happen. But no matter how good some of those years were, if I had a year where I was not shooting for myself and giving myself permission to create the photographs I wanted to create, I was not creatively fulfilled. I could be shooting weddings, like I could shoot in like 6 states in 1 month. And if I was just not shooting if I was not shooting for myself, I did not feel fulfilled and I did not feel happy. But I could shoot. And I love that. I love traveling. I love doing all those things. I love being able to shoot different people on different stages and just like have so much fun with it. But if you get caught up in that and get caught up in like, I need to be here, I need to do this, just know the people that seem so successful and that they've done all of these things, a lot of them really only feel that fulfillment that we're all striving for if they are creating photographs that mean something to them. And so that's what's important to me. And as the years have gone on, that becomes more and more important to me because, like, when I look back up on my work, it's my body of work. It's not just one photograph. It's not just one awesome style shoot, one awesome client. It is all of it together. But when we're working with clients and working with vendors or photography friends for certain things, the things that we work on, that can be symbolized by like one thing, right? If you go shoot a wedding in Austin, Texas, you go shoot the wedding in Austin, Texas, and then that couple has the photographs and they love them forever. But that is just a splash in your photography portfolio, like in your whole photography existence. And I feel like that is sometimes we're chasing after, like, I want to shoot a wedding in the Grand Tetons. I want to do this. I want to do that. And those things are fantastic, but it's not about that one thing. You're going to get that one thing and you're not going to feel fulfilled because it's just one thing. And you need to find creative fulfillment. This is totally my soapbox. I'm sorry. But you need to find creative fulfillment on all of it together. And one thing, one great shoot, one great publication is not going to do that for you.
I think you should rename your upcoming podcast to the Photography Soapbox, because that was perfect. I think that a lot of people are going to resonate with that. I know I did, and I can attest to that as well. It's like I've had shoots where I thought like, this is it. I made it. And then afterwards you're like, well, that was fun, but that didn't change anything. And like that feeling kind of goes away. So that's really important to talk about. And I don't think many people are talking about that. So that is very cool. Lissa, I don't know how to end it any better than that. That was truly an eye opener. And again, I think that a lot of listeners are going to resonate with that. So before I let you go, can you let listeners know where they can find out more about you, your book, and your upcoming podcast as well online?
My website is lissachandler.com. My handle is Lissa Claire on Instagram. It's also Opal in June because I run a salad shoot shop, and all the information will be on those locations.
I love conversations like this. My biggest takeaway, hands down, was to simply just be true to yourself and your creativity. I know of a cinematographer who only shoots transparent liquids, and they work all the time because that's what they are known for. But personally, I think niching down that much would honestly drive me crazy. And I think Lissa realized that about herself as well, and goes out of her way to shoot many different things so that she can be fulfilled by her art and her photography. Absolutely love that. Now, at the beginning of the interview, I shared that I will be giving away a copy of Lissa's book right here, Photo Shoot Checklist, a step-by-step organizer to manage your photo shoots. So all that you got to do to enter is to be subscribed to the Beginner Photography Podcast newsletter. So if you get emails from me currently from the Beginner Photography Podcast, then congratulations, you already entered. But if not, and you want to enter, then you can head over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com right now. And on the homepage, you will see a sign up for my most popular ebook, Picture Perfect Camera Settings. Sign up right there. It's absolutely free, and you will be entered to win automatically. I'm going to be doing several of these throughout the year, so be sure to sign up now at beginnerphotographypodcast.com. That is it for this week. Remember, the more that you shoot today, the better you will be tomorrow. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.